Arthur scrolled down, his eyes scanning the blurry microfilm text. There was a transcript of a letter found near Vane's body, written in an erratic, desperate hand. I sought to see the unseen. I cast a ritual to bind the dark matter of the universe to a human ego, to give it a soul. But the ritual gave it no flesh. It has no body to hurt, no throat to scream through. It is an entity of pure displacement. It casts a shadow because it rejects the light of creation. It is hungry for a vessel. It wants a body. It wants mine. Arthur's breath hitched. An entity of pure displacement. The temperature in the study plummeted to 0. The brass lamp on his desk began to flicker, the filament inside singing a high-pitched, dying song. Arthur looked at the floor. The shadow of his desk chair was stretching. From beneath the mahogany desk, a massive, jagged pool of blackness was pouring out. It didn't crawl up the walls this time. It rose into the air. The air itself distorted, warping the view of the bookshelves behind it like heat rising off asphalt. Arthur could see the outline of a towering, monstrous shape, a head with no features, shoulders that jaggedly shifted, arms that ended in wisps of darkness. It was completely invisible, yet its outline was perfectly defined by the way it mutilated the light and the space around it. It lunged. The siege. Arthur threw himself backward, his chair flipping over with a loud crash. He scrambled on his hands and knees out of the study, the invisible weight crashing down onto the desk behind him. The sound of splintering wood echoed through the house as the heavy mahogany desk was violently snapped in half by an unseen force. He ran down the dark hallway, his bare feet slapping against the cold hardwood. The entity was right behind him. He could feel the wake of its movement, a freezing, violent wind that smelled of old graves and static electricity. He darted into the bathroom and slammed the heavy oak door, throwing the deadbolt just as a massive impact shuddered through the wood. The door groaned, the hinges straining against the frame. Arthur backed away until his spine hit the cold tiles of the bathroom wall. He was trapped. There were no windows in this room. There was only a toilet, a sink, and the large, medicine cabinet mirror above it. The mirror. Arthur remembered the newspaper article. Elias Vane's home was found entirely devoid of mirrors. Why? Why would an invisible shadow fear a mirror? Another impact hit the door. A crack split down the center panel of the oak. A blast of freezing air whistled through the fissure. Arthur's hands shook as he looked at his own reflection in the mirror. He looked haggard, pale, a man on the brink of death. If the creature was an entity of pure displacement, a rejection of light, what happens when it faces its own non-existence? A shadow cannot exist without a light source, and a mirror reflects light. The door splintered. A huge chunk of wood flew inward, crashing into the bathtub. Through the gaping hole in the door, the darkness poured in. The bathroom light bulb instantly shattered, raining hot glass onto the floor. The room was plunged into near total darkness, saved only by the pale starlight filtering through the cracked door from the hallway. Arthur could see the shadow rising before him. It filled the doorway, a towering monolith of absolute blackness, its edges vibrating with malicious intent. It had no face, but Arthur could feel its gaze, a cold, hungry pressure pushing against his mind, paralyzing his muscles. The shadow moved closer. The air grew so cold that Arthur's skin began to sting, frost forming on his eyebrows. The invisible force pressed against his chest, pinning him to the wall, lifting his feet an inch off the ground. He couldn't breathe. His lungs felt like they were filling with liquid ice. With the last ounce of his strength, Arthur reached to his right. His fingers brushed against the edge of the medicine cabinet mirror. He didn't just want to look into it, he needed to use it. He gripped the edge of the glass pane and pulled with all his might. The old hinges screamed, resisting for a second before snapping off the rusted screws. Arthur wrenched the heavy glass mirror free from the wall, holding it up like a shield in front of his chest, facing the towering void. shattered light. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. Then, the shadow froze. The pale starlight from the hallway struck the surface of the mirror and reflected directly back into the center of the invisible mass. A sound tore through the room, not a human scream, but a terrifying, metallic screech, like two trains colliding at high speed. The shadow on the walls began to thrash violently. The mirror in Arthur's hands vibrated so intensely that it cut into his palms, blood welling up and smearing across the glass. In the reflection of the mirror, Arthur didn't see the bathroom. He saw the creature. It wasn't invisible to the silver backing of the mirror. In the glass, the shadow was a roiling, chaotic mass of eyes and teeth, a cosmic horror of compressed darkness that had no business existing in a three-dimensional world. It was a weeping sore on reality, and it was looking at itself. The creature loathed its own image. The reflection seemed to create a feedback loop of displacement. The shadow began to fold in on itself, collapsing inward like a dying star. The pressure in the room became unbearable. Arthur's ears blew out, a sharp hiss of blood trickling from his left ear. The walls groaned as the structural beams of the house twisted under the immense gravitational pull of the collapsing entity. "Get out!" Arthur screamed, though he couldn't hear his own voice. He thrust the mirror forward, pressing the reflection directly into the heart of the void. The mirror shattered. The glass exploded outward in a million glittering shards, catching the faint light like a galaxy of falling stars. Each shard carried a tiny, fractured piece of the reflection. The screeching sound reached a deafening crescendo, and then... pop! The pressure vanished. The freezing cold dissipated in an instant, replaced by the warm, stagnant air of a summer night. The heavy silence returned to 42 Blackwood Lane. The aftermath. Arthur collapsed to the floor, gasping for air, his chest heaving as he dragged the warm oxygen back into his starved lungs. His hands were bleeding, peppered with tiny shards of glass, but he didn't care. He looked around the room. The door was ruined, the sink was cracked, and the floor was covered in the glittering remains of the mirror. But the shadow was gone. The air was clear. The oppressive, hateful weight that had suffocated the house for weeks had vanished entirely. Arthur dragged himself up, stumbling out of the bathroom and through the ruined hallway. He walked out the front door, stepping onto the porch. The cool night air felt like a benediction on his skin. He looked up at the stars, tears blurring his vision. He was alive. He had beaten it. He spent the next 2 days in a hospital city, getting his hands stitched and his ears treated for ruptured eardrums. He sold the house at a massive loss to a commercial developer who planned to tear it down and build a parking lot. Arthur didn't care about the money. He just wanted the house destroyed. A month later, Arthur moved into a modern, sun-drenched apartment in the heart of the city. There were no dark corners, no cedar smells, and every room was lined with floor-to-ceiling windows. He sat at his new glass desk, sipping coffee, finally at peace. The sun was setting, casting long, golden shadows across the hardwood floor. Arthur smiled, watching his own shadow stretch out before him. Then, he froze. The sun had set completely. The apartment was dark. But on the floor, stretched out from the base of his chair, his shadow remained, long, jagged, and perfectly still, even when Arthur stood up. And from the silent corners of the room, the air began to grow cold.